Welcome to the Brew Crew Review Podcast, the show by fans for fans of your Milwaukee Brewers.
All right, Brewer fans, welcome to the Brew Crew Review Podcast. My name is Craig. Joining me is my co-host Vince Strato. And Happy New Year and Happy Holidays to everyone. How are you doing, Vince?
I'm doing great, Craig. Do we have Chad or Scotty on with us today?
Yep.
Oh boy. Well, another year though. At least we're hanging in there. So we may not have been successful yet in saving Christmas, but maybe we can save the New Year's.
Yeah, maybe. So let's and we started this offseason. Brewers kind of needing some major roster reconstruction in our opinions, I guess, and knowing that they didn't have a whole lot of roster holes, so to speak, as far as like openings at positions. I still thought there'd be some roster movement, and although there have been, the trade that brought us in Jesse Winker, and also our new starting catcher and William Contreras, there really still has been a disappointing lack of roster movement. And most notably, as of this podcast taping, we are the only Major League Baseball team that has not signed a major league free agent. And we're now into 2020. We're within hours of going into 2023 here, Vince. So what is your take on that?
Well, not good. I was kind of hoping we didn't have that distinction. It was really coming down to the final hours here, and we ended up losing it. So I think the Miami Marlins signed Gene Segura several days ago as of this taping. And, Craig, if you would have told me going into the offseason that the Miami Marlins were going to sign a free agent before the Milwaukee Brewers, I would not have believed it. So I think that we had one of our interns put something like that up on our social media when Segura signed with Miami a day or two ago. And yeah, I see that I see a lot of moves that could have been made. One of our followers on Twitter asked, well, what free agents would you have wanted the Brewers to sign? I looked at that and I listed like 6 or 7 guys that I thought could have been reasonable fits in Milwaukee. And I know a few we've talked about on our podcast before, Craig, guys like Will Myers and a few of the names that were bigger that came off the board and were very expensive weren't even on that list. These were all reasonable targets for Milwaukee or a team like Milwaukee to pick up. And I just don't understand. I know that we're trying to acquire more guys through trades, and I get that, and I understand that that's a strategy of the front office. But, at least as far as I'm concerned, this team had so many holes that it would have been a much easier fill for the Brewers to take a flyer on a couple of guys in the free agent market. It wouldn't have been terribly costly. And I think the Brewers would have benefited. So I don't understand this inactivity. And to me, it comes down to something I've picked up on and we've talked about a few times in our podcast here before, but it's just that this front office seems to be so reactive in many cases instead of proactive. And by that, I mean, it seems like if they had, kind of thought through some of the needs on the roster going into the offseason and said, okay, we're going to make it a priority to go get this guy and this guy and this guy, rather than waiting for, some other team's front office to, make a guy like Contreras available. I just don't know why it is that we're being so reactive. So I guess that's my question for larger discussion is what is causing the Brewers front office to not be proactive enough to go out and, get the guys that we want to get and make a plan with it.
Well, yeah, I mean, you see where your prior season's roster was lacking, and obviously, just to throw it out there, but obviously, I don't think our offense was up to snuff last year. And knowing like your highest paid franchise player, Christian Yelich, is a shell of his former self.
Right.
Chris Castanera, who is really someone you counted on to be a middle order hitter, has not lived up to his hype and is near borderline a bust at this point. And even though you had some really nice stories from last year, and Willie Adames having a great year, Roddy Tellez solidifying himself as a middle order hitter, and all that. In spite of all that, you still did not score enough runs. Your offense really suffered last year. So I agree with you that going into an offseason as a GM, you have to identify who are these guys that are going to be free agents, or who are these
Yeah.
guys on other teams that might be available for trade, and to check in on that. Some that you want to, make a play for, so to speak, and not only have one free agent target that you really, really want, then go after them. And if it doesn't work out because he doesn't want to come play for you, or the money's not there, have a backup plan too. And then, normally if you land a free agent you were shooting for, then I'm fine with this strategy of just waiting back and seeing where there's some bargains, fill out the roster. But we're already at that stage. We've signed no one, and looking at who's left, it's really depressing. It's really depressing.
Yeah. It really is, Craig. And I guess a couple things on that. First, I don't want it to be, my opinion at least, and I think yours as well, to be viewed as just being, anti-Brewers front office. I mean, I certainly give the front office credit for the Contreras trade. I think that the Wong trade was a win for the Brewers. I think that, I think that the Renfroe trade, I don't know if I would have made that, but, I think you could have that conversation, and others would disagree with me, and that's okay. But I am very disheartened by their overall approach and by their lack of movement and again, being proactive. It just makes no sense to me that you would take a team that has a starting rotation with Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff, Freddie Peralta, Eric Lauer, and is solid from top to bottom for the first time in many, many years. I mean, I'm not talking about the last few, but I'm saying like in other generations of Brewers baseball, this has got to be the best pitching staff from top to bottom that the Brewers have ever managed to assemble at one time. And to me, at least, to be a bat or two away from being one of the, from being a true contender, or actually from being one of the best teams in the National League, it's inexcusable that the Brewers are not taking advantage of this window, especially when you've got so much external money coming in to the franchise. So you can't simply state that we don't have the money because we're a small market team. Well, I'm sorry, but when you're getting $30 million from Disney as part of that deal, when you're getting the monies from the Mets and the Padres and the Yankees and other teams through the luxury tax, when you're getting money from the TV deal, when the fans have continued to come out and support the Brewers time and time again over the past 10 years, when you've got some seasons where ownership talked publicly about how they were purposely not spending money. Yeah, I'm thinking of seasons like 2013 or 14, so that they could actually put that towards when the team did get good again to be a competitor. And instead of adding on to this core that we have, we're cutting payroll. It's mind-boggling to me. I just don't understand. And to the other point that I was making before, one of the quick lists, our intern, or Scotty's intern, just sent it to me here. Just a quick list, and you and I are going to disagree about some of the names, but that we put out on social media as being guys that the Brewers should have at least talked with, who were free agents this year. Gene Segura, Michael Conforto, Will Myers, Josh Bell, Jose Quintana, Justin Turner, Brandon Drury, Michael Brantley, JD Martinez, Kevin Kiermaier, Brad Boxberger, maybe Mitch Haniger. I mean, there's a bunch of names that, again, we're not going to agree that all of them would have been good fits with Milwaukee, but these guys were on the market, and some of those conversations should at least have been being had. And you've heard nothing out of this front office all offseason outside the Contreras trade, besides cutting payroll. I just don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day when the Steelings ran the team, whatever, a lot of times there'd be like one big splash free agent signing that it felt like we'd sell. We'd obviously be a bad team, but then we'd still even have like one big splash free agent signing that we try to sell to season ticket holders. So we, basically argued that we'd be competitive. And we're so far from that. We have this pretty borderline contender team, in my opinion. And we're not even doing that. And again, in their defense, I guess, that strategy didn't really work when you signed like the Jeffrey Hammonds of the world, or pretty much any free agent the Brewers signed during like that 20-30 year period of time seemed to not really fully work out very well. So
Joey Reed and Ben McDonald were great memories for you.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I mean, this strategy just seems so opposite of that, in the fact that we have this good team in place where we only need to add one or two more really good pieces to possibly make a difference, and we're just not doing it. And again, I get that I understand that they're gun shy about signing anyone to like a 3 to 7 year contract. So again, they're probably waiting around for guys for 1 or 2 year deals, but they pass up on a lot of guys like that too. I mean, it's disconcerting to me. And even just to build
like Segura.
Yeah.
Segura got a 2 year deal. I thought it was a very reasonable deal. He's continued to hit very well since he was a Brewer. In fact, Craig, I remember being with you the day that we traded him to Arizona after Sabre Day at the Brat Stop a few years back. But I look at a guy like Segura, and he's not the guy who I wanted at the beginning of this offseason, certainly. But I do think that he is a guy that, for what he's getting paid, I probably would have just taken a flyer and thrown him into the mix. And we knew he's publicly stated how much he loved Milwaukee. I mean, it just makes no sense how we're not matching a team like Miami, a perennial, 4th or 5th place team, in acquiring somebody of that caliber. I just don't understand what we're going to do for roster depth. I think that our outfield is very young right now, which is fine, but to rely on that, if you're a contending team in a small little sliver of a window, if this was 5 years ago and we were just going to go young, I'd be really excited about guys like, Garrett Mitchell or Joey Weimer, or, other prospects that are coming up to the Brewer system, Bryce Terang guys. And I am excited about these guys, but I don't think that you want to just throw them to the wolves if you're planning on being one of the premier teams in the National League. I think you kind of bring them in a more gradual fashion and surround them with some more veteran players who you are using to supplement that core base of your team, which is a rotation. So to me, that's the fatal flaw in our offseason plan.
Yeah, and we did bring in via trade, Jesse Winker. Not huge on. In fact, I think we mentioned on previous podcasts, I'd be completely fine if the Brewers flipped him in another trade for a different player. He can play the corner outfield, but really he's not good there and is better suited as a DH, which is fine because we don't really have someone earmarked as our DH. I guess I would guess that our DH who played there most last year was Andrew McCutchen. So I guess Winker is similar in that he's a veteran, except he's left-handed instead of right-handed hitting, which helps the Brewers. And
right.
But with that being said, I still feel that some of the guys left out there that I'd even be interested in unsigned, are guys that would probably have to slot in at like a DH or at least platoon at first base, which again, I don't necessarily want to, platoon Rowdy now. But I mean, look at guys like Nelson Cruz, probably strictly DH. He's still out there. You've got like Trey Mancini, another right-handed first base DH type. Again, he could possibly platoon with Rowdy or get some DH platooning in with Winker. So he might be a possibility that I'd get kind of excited about, but not really. I mean, and it's just the rest, or even someone like Adam Duvall. I mean, he has some power, but he's like mid-30s, probably wouldn't cost too much. Or, are they entertaining bringing back McCutchen again? I mean, he's getting closer to 40 than 35 at this point, I think. I don't know. I
haven't really heard many rumors for McCutchen at all, but, I don't know that I'd even want McCutchen back at this point. I mean, he was okay-ish for us. He had some decent spurts last year, but, obviously with him in the lineup, we only were so offensively capable, and he's not getting any younger, as you pointed out. So I just don't know. I don't know how the Brewers expect to take that next step. I guess that's what I keep coming back to. I sort of look at this as, pluses and minuses every offseason, and we look at, where the Brewers finished last year. We didn't win the division. We didn't make the playoffs, and we've gotten worse offensively since the offseason started. So, to me, Narvaez, Contreras is clearly an upgrade over Narvaez, obviously, but I do think that I do think that we're going to miss Renfro's power. I do think that I think that at best you could make an argument that the Brewers offense is about as good as it was last year, maybe. But we've lost Wong, we've lost Renfro, we've lost McCutcheon, and we've replaced them, and we've lost Narvaez, and we've replaced them with, Contreras, Winker, and I just don't know if we've managed to acquire enough to overcome some of those losses. So I'm pretty concerned about our offense, to be totally frank. I know that
I don't think we've
we'll have
improved
some of the
overall, like you said, from last
No, I
year
don't think so.
as of yet. So
Yeah.
we'll
And
see.
the off season, I know that, when I raised some of these points a month ago, everyone was saying, "Oh, the off season is early." Well, the off season isn't early anymore. I mean, we're pitchers and catchers report in like 5.5 weeks. So I just, we're past Christmas. We're almost in a new year. And before you know it, you're going to have some of the first spring training mini camps opening up. Guys start to show up in Arizona after the new year. And, I think that pitchers and catchers report something like February 9th this year, February 10th, somewhere in there. And, we're talking about 5.5 weeks from now. So I know the Brewers have done things later in the offseason in past years. It seems to be an MO. I understand that we didn't get Christian Yelich and Lorenzo Cain until later in the offseason. Those were January additions. I know that in years past, when the Brewers, were actually holding a fan fest, which, by the way, is another topic that we should talk about, that they canceled this year for no reason, with no announcement. They used to make a splash. It seemed like every time, like a couple of days before a fan fest, everybody got pumped. I'm thinking of Trevor Hoffman specifically, but I don't know that that's in the cards this year. I don't even know, as you were just kind of alluding to, I don't even know which free agents I'd be excited about. I mean, I guess I'd be kind of happy with Mancini at this point, but having seen him in Houston the last couple of months of the year here, he struggled quite a bit, and I don't think that's who he is as a player, but I don't know that we can count on, like a few years ago, peak Mancini or 2021 Mancini. So I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know what's going to happen yet, but I do know that we can't go into the year expecting to be improved with the guys that we've currently picked up this offseason overall.
And I expect there to be one free agent signing forthcoming, at least, of a vet. Well, first of all, I think that we will add someone to the bullpen via free agency. And again, we're probably just waiting for those values to shake down. If I had to throw a guess for a bullpen ad, I'm just going to throw out there the name Matt Moore, a left-handed pitcher who used to be a starter and I think is a decent arm that we could possibly sign. But and then for the if you look at our track record on the offensive side, I'm willing to guess it'll be, look at the last two seasons. We added really late veteran outfielders in Andrew McCutcheon and Jackie Bradley Jr. Looking at this list, if I had to guess someone, it would be someone like Adam Duvall, or I'm just going to throw out there, it'll be like someone like Evan Longoria. Again, very similar to Andrew McCutcheon last year, was a player that had some former glory, in fact, near MVP glory, but is up there in age and fairly washed up in a shell of his former self. That's not gonna get it done, in my opinion. Sorry, but it's just not.
No, I agree. Longoria, I think, had 14 bombs last year and 13 the year before. I mean, we're not talking about a guy who's obviously in his prime at, I think, age 37 or 38, and somebody who'd spent a number of years since he was last an all-star. In fact, I just don't know what you would even hope that you're bringing in at that point, outside of maybe a bat off the bench. So to get a fan base excited about a guy like Evan Longoria, I think I hate to use this word, but I think it's kind of pathetic. I think that we saw some of that last year with McCutcheon, to be totally frank, where, it takes so little to get our fans excited about the Brewers, which is an awesome quality to have as a fan base, but it's pretty ridiculous when you look at how other franchises operate. I mean, I don't know of many other fan bases in baseball that would tolerate this level of, kind of placation from the front office and ineptitude and not doing anything. It's crazy that we're so close and we're not doing anything. I just keep coming back to that idea. It's very, very frustrating. And it's another example of the organization just not taking that extra step that we would need to take. And I think it's going to contribute to a larger, more frustration for Brewers fans. I can't imagine how we make the playoffs with this team as it's currently assembled, outside of the fact that our pitching is our saving grace. And I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah. And so I want to call out the Brewers just like you did on the cancellation of Fan Fest.
Yeah.
It's been a staple. It's been a staple and a very popular event here in Milwaukee for a very long time. And I believe that they have not held it since the pandemic.
2020.
Yeah.
Yeah. 2020, they did it in January of that year, Craig. I did look it up. It was held, and then COVID hit in March of that year.
Yeah. And I actually did attend that last one in 2020, and there were an unbelievable amount of people. I think I had to wait outside in line to even get in. And once you're inside, there were more lines, and it was an unbelievably unpopular event, in my opinion. In fact, I was at the point where I was like, this is almost getting too popular, but to completely cancel it seems, I would really like the explanation behind this. Obviously you could use COVID and health protocols or whatever excuse, but I mean, I think we should be beyond that. And it could just be, I really would like an explanation from the Milwaukee Brewers on this one, really, because I mean, obviously I'm sure the players themselves are fine with it, not having to come to Milwaukee in January and whatever. And we're probably even pushing to have it canceled or whatever. But like, I'm sorry, the fans pay your salaries, period. This is an event that should be happening.
Totally 100% agree. And it's just one in a number of steps that they've taken, and I'll go on the soapbox for 30 seconds, that the Brewers organization has taken to become less fan friendly in an age when we should be encouraging people to love baseball. It's the same thing as, kicking out autograph seekers from before the game by the parking lot, and putting up nets to keep during batting practice, which not all other teams do, by the way. Many teams take down the net during batting practice so that players and fans can interact and mingle more. The Brewers don't do that. And in fact, they've gotten more strict about allowing fans, even on the first level, to go and ask for autographs in the first place, and kicking that, if they do allow them at all, to kick them out earlier before the game starts, and not allow any sort of access. So now they've cut out the autograph Fridays that used to be had. If you remember those, Craig, I know that you do, because we were at some of them together. Yep. So there's literally like no opportunities outside of this event for Brewers fans and Brewers players to interact outside of some random appearance at some random school once in a while. And that's it. And I just cannot imagine how you foster the love of baseball and the love of the game in the local community with keeping fans and players further and further apart. I just will never understand why a team would make that choice. It makes absolutely no sense at all. And I'm sorry, but if the players can't, figure out that it's good for them and good for the city and good for everybody for them to hop on a plane for one day to come up to Milwaukee in January, well, I'm sorry, but then you really don't deserve fans at that point. And I think that if I was in charge, I would expand it. I would go back to what it used to be. They used to do a statewide tour, if you remember, and it lasted. This may have been a little bit before our time, but having heard about this from other people who were there, they used to do a 1-week tour around the state of Wisconsin to drum up support. So the Brewers would have an event in Green Bay and an event in La Crosse and an event in Wausau and an event in Madison, and then finish it with a weekend in Milwaukee, Brewers Fest, which included the players signing autographs, and it all ended with a bowling tournament that the players would host, and you could pay extra money to go bowl with the Brewers. And that was fun. And the Brewers Fan Fest itself was free, and autographs were free. Like, they didn't even charge money at that point for stuff. And I understand that the tickets that they've charged in recent years goes to Brewers charities, so I'm actually fine with that. But the fact is that they've just made it harder and harder and harder for fans to experience the team up close and personal. It's just another example of it becoming more corporate rather than more fan friendly, and it's very bothersome. This is supposed to be fun.
Yeah, and throughout baseball, I mean, they've got this issue where they say, "Oh, millennials don't like baseball because it's not fast-paced enough," or this, that. So we're going to have to start making changes to the game that's been the same way for like 100 years. when we have to start making massive change, more than 100 years, massive changes in the way that the game's played so that we can keep millennials locked in. How about actually trying to lock them in when they're still children? I mean, apparently the nation allows cigarette companies and or vaping companies to do such a thing. So, but somehow Major League Baseball cannot, still cater toward children. I mean, you have to make access to players. I mean, if you have a 6-year-old boy who gets a ball signed by a player or something like that, he's going to be a baseball fan forever. I'm sorry, it's all part of the experience.
Yeah, I agree. I was that kid. I mean, it's kind of funny when you think back to how it used to be to today. I mean, it is so strict now. There's like a TSA, worse than TSA security checkpoint outside of Miller Park, walking into games where you get patted down, frisked, told that your bag isn't clear enough to bring in because it's some shade of shopping bag that they don't allow. I mean, it's wild, the hoops that they make you jump through in order to support their product. I've just never seen a business model that can survive by acting like this. And I do business consulting every day. I just don't know what it is that they think is going to end up happening 20, 30 years from now. I know that MLB is in a great place financially, but the draconian things that this organization is doing, the unfan friendly things that this organization is doing, that making it a big pain in order to watch your product, both in person and on television, that the organization is currently doing, plus having an uninspiring product on the field because you don't bother to invest in it, are all things that this ownership group at some point is going to have to deal with. And it may not be this year and it may not be next, but at some point down the road, they are going to have to answer to fans who are going to be questioning a lot of these decisions and why they've been made over the years. And I think the Brewers Fan Fest being canceled is another of those decisions. And we started the Brew Crew Review as a television show because we were inspired to bring a fan's perspective to the Brewers and that approach. We aren't, despite them being our colleagues, we're not looking at this as journalists, like Adam McCalvey or our former colleague Tom Hodgecourt. We're not paid by the team. We don't do this for our living. It's just we're fans of the team, and it's really frustrating. But I'm really thinking that the fans' perspective is needed now more than ever, so that there's at least some voice out there that's giving the organization this feedback. I don't understand what is going to be done, but I do know that some things are going to build up, and over time they're going to have a very detrimental effect unless some things are changed.
Yeah, so I mean, that's the type of thing that baseball should be looking to market, like how to make this a family-friendly and kid-friendly game, because that's what it is. It's a game, right? And that's how you lock these people in. And baseball has been so good at doing that over the years, and they have been more fan-friendly than like other sports like football and basketball. I mean, I was a kid, I went to a football game and I went to a basketball game. I never got anywhere near a player, not even close. But when I go to baseball games, I'd be able to go right up to the fence and interact with a player. And being a couple feet from a player that you idolize and look up to and watch play on television or on the radio or whatever, it's awe-inspiring and it really locks the kid in and makes you a fan. And to be able to walk away with a piece of memorabilia or have an experience like Fan Fest is something that you cannot just take away from kids and expect to still grow your sport. It's just idiotic to me. I would really like an explanation from someone, and specifically from the Milwaukee Brewers organization. I'm going to try to reach out and get one because it's ridiculous. I mean, I feel like I'm going to get some type of cookie cutter answer that that is something to do with health or whatever and safety and all this stuff. And I think it's BS. I'm sorry. That's what I'm going to say at that time.
Yeah, you can't be talking up the health and safety aspect if you're going to build another big bar at Miller Park, which already has like 20 bars inside the stadium, and that's the investment this offseason. So, it has nothing to do with health and safety, and I'm sure that you will get a corporate response. We actually asked the Brewers on Twitter, on social media, and a number of our followers chimed in and asked also that because they said that they wanted to know, and nobody from the Brewers responded. We've also tweeted at Adam McCalvey, who also didn't respond, though he has responded to us about a number of other things over the years. So it's like nobody wants to be the one to break the news. The Brewers have never even made an announcement that FanFest wasn't happening. They just basically haven't set the dates and don't say anything. So it's cowardly. I mean, it really is. The fact that they're not giving an explanation or even addressing the fact that this has been a tradition up until COVID for years. It's part of these subtle changes that happened that the Brewers wanted to push, and that you could kind of justify during COVID, I guess. Saying, okay, well, we don't want to have big gatherings, but they've continued to do it even after a vaccine has been out for, a year and a half, and when numbers have been good, and all these different things have changed, since March of 2020, and they still continue to do these things. They even blamed, this is my favorite, they even blamed not printing the media guide on COVID. They said it had to be electronic. And I started laughing. I'm like, well, what do you, anyways, it's mind boggling to me, some of the things that have been blamed on COVID.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's,
which is another example on how this decision, without being advertised or explained or anything like that, has going to have a ripple effect on them as an organization. The last 3 years, I think 3 or 4 years, my kids, I signed both of them up to be in the kids crew, where they get a pack of items and some free ticket vouchers.
Yep.
And each of those, they used to actually also receive a free ticket to Fan Fest. I was like, that was a really cool idea, and that's a great way to lock a kid in to be a baseball fan. And I noticed it wasn't part of this year's package at all. And then that's the first time I found out that it's not happening. I actually had to look it up myself. Yeah. So again, they're not advertising. I'm sure they're getting calls or whatever, but just it's ridiculous. And I think that the only way that it'll reverse the trend or be back at next year is if they get hit with feedback and it hits them in the pocket somehow, with people no longer attending baseball games, and that's what's probably going to happen with me and my kids this next year, unfortunately. So
no, you're 100% right. I get my nieces and nephews the kids club as well as part of their Christmas gifts in past years. I actually didn't do it this year. I switched it over to baseball cards, which hopefully they're not listening, because I haven't been out there yet for Christmas, but they got them a bunch of baseball cards and sets and stuff instead this year, because there's just too many things with the organization that you can't tell, sort of pissing me off right now. So I'm not saying boycott the team or something. I'm just saying I stepped back from things like that this year, and will encourage their love of baseball in other ways, because there's other ways to do that, and maybe in a more deserving to people who are more deserving. But I will just say this too, as a collector of sports memorabilia and baseball cards and autographs and different things with baseball memorabilia, that if Christian Yelich can do a signing at Waukesha Sports Cards or at one of the other big sports cards companies in California or Milwaukee, and he'll charge $150 to sign a baseball at one of those signings. And some people can afford that, and that's great. And it doesn't price some people out of the market, but I'm very concerned about the people that it does price out, who are just diehard fans, people whose kids want to get Christian Yelich. So Christian Yelich at the Brewers Fan Fest, you can buy an autograph ticket for players. Many of them are free. Some are $10, and the highest one is $25. And $25, and that money goes to charities. And that I think is a pretty reasonable price point for a guy who won the MVP award. You can get Euchre for that price. They limit the amount of autographs that guy is going to sign. He's not there all day, but I'm just saying that presented an opportunity for a kid who may not have otherwise been able to afford it, either on their own or because their parents couldn't afford it, to go and have an autographed souvenir from a guy like Christian Yelich. If you were willing to get there early enough and get that ticket and spend that $25, that's a lot more palatable of an option than the $150 to $200 that you would pay at a private sports cards show or store. So I just throw that out there as well. It's just another casualty of canceling an event like this.
Yeah, so they got. I mean, it's been a rough 6 months to be a Brewer fan. I mean, from being in first place before the July trade deadline, trading Josh Hader, then going in the off season, having president of baseball operations David Stearns step down, Then you had an off season here where we're not signing any free agents at all. The only team in baseball is not signing Major League Baseball as of the end of the year. And then you have this cancellation of Fan Fest. I mean, what's happening here is out there you've got 5-year-old little boy named Scott somewhere was about to become a baseball fan that probably isn't going to be.
Yep.
And you also have somewhere out there a 45-year-old little boy named Scott that also probably is going to give up and not be a baseball fan anymore either, not spend his money on baseball. And the Brewers are sowing this, and it needs to stop. So hopefully this.
Yeah, I agree. I think we should definitely encourage fans rather than boycott the team or something. I'm not saying that. I think the fans. Anyone who's listening to this podcast, I would certainly encourage you to at least reach out to the Brewers. And if you are concerned about some of these issues like Craig and Scott and Chad and I are, I would encourage you to reach out and write the team and just say, exactly why it's upsetting that, certain things are happening with the team that are not only unpopular, but they're not good for the health of the franchise long term or short term. And that I think is something that the team needs to hear. I think there's a tendency for some of these folks to live in a bit of a bubble and to ignore the fans. But I think it's important that they hear this voice. So I will certainly be doing so. I know that our anonymous source, Tom Carter, who works for the team, he said that they do take that at least somewhat serious if they do get some feedback. So
yeah,
that's from Tom.
TC, he doesn't just go with Tom C.
Yep. Okay. All right. Yep.
So so obviously Happy New Year to all the Brewer fans out there. I still feel that we've got a positive season coming up, and hopefully there's some move that we're not foreseeing here that's going to strengthen our offense, our bullpen, and possibly give us some depth of rotation, all that stuff, maybe a couple of moves. I feel like by the next time we do a podcast, the Brewers will have got off the last musical chair, so to speak, and actually signed a free agent. But we'll see, and we'll be back to discuss that. And then we're also hoping this offseason to possibly bring you a couple of former Brewer player interviews and some Brewer upcoming podcasts as well. So hopefully you guys stay tuned for all that. So. We'll
call this one a belated Festivus airing of grievances episode, Craig. I didn't want to appear quite so negative, but it's just a lot of things that have sort of been building up. I think that I don't think are completely unusual for a lot of Brewer fans to be feeling at this point in the off season. But on a brighter note, there will be a new year that starts in a couple days here, and hopefully that means brighter things for our favorite baseball team, the Milwaukee Brewers, as well. And continue to follow us at Brew Crew Review 1 on Twitter. Continue to send in your questions. We will get to them on one of our future episodes. Brew Crew Review Podcast with an S at gmail.com. And big thanks to you, Craig, for hosting duties again here in 2022, and a lot of fun. Thanks to Chad. Thanks to Scotty. Thanks to all of our fans who continue to support us and listen to us over the years. Looking forward to coming back strong in 2023 and keeping our streak going, 2004 to another year.
All right. Happy New Year, Vince. And stay classy.
Happy New Year.
Stay classy, Milwaukee Brewers Baseball Club, and go Brewers.
Stay classy, Wisconsin. Go Brewers.